news updates. And as you can tell from today's title, Congress is coming after your 401k. America's pension crisis is getting worse. I'm going to be covering several different articles, all dealing with the ongoing pension crisis we're experiencing here in America and what is to come. And so we're only 4 days into the new year, and already we have news about countries deciding to remove themselves or rethink the dollar, or aka dump the dollar. President Erdogan in Turkey tells his citizens in order to help the country out, it'd be in your best interest to go under your pillow, grab the dollars, the euros, and gold. And as you tell from today's title, how the baby boomers will lose their retirement nest egg, I want to share with you a couple thoughts as well as some articles on how the next market correction will be catastrophic for a lot of people. All right, we're live. Midday news stream. It's the second day of attempting to cover some of the top stories happening around the globe. And so I figure I would just take a minute, log in, see what's going on, see if we can get a good stream going and go from there. So with that being the case, appreciate you taking time to join us, join me rather, this afternoon, wherever you're watching from. Just want to touch on a couple news stories happening, as I mentioned, and then go from there. And the more important thing is I'm going to just share them in the link or the chat right here so you can actually get a hold of them for yourself. So give it a second before I get into today's topics. I got, let me see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12-ish. I got about 12-ish or so articles. I'm just going to touch on them, scan through them, share them with you, let you do what you would like to do with them as far as diving further, if not, or dismissing it, whatever you want to do. But that being the case, give it a second before we go full steam ahead. Want to make sure everybody's notified, and hopefully we can have a good stream with no interruptions. So that being the case, looking to do these more often during the midday if time permits, and to get your thoughts and whatnot. And as well as if there's anything happening out there that's worthy of bringing to the attention of the RTD community, definitely let me know in the chat over here. There will be no phone line. There will be no phone line this afternoon because I don't want to get too thrown off track by having call-ins, and so we'll save that for the evening stream. So news in the afternoon. Share your thoughts via phone lines in the evening. So that's the format as of now. We'll go from there. But with that being the case, I'll check in the chat, see who's tuning in. We got Scott. We got Rainmaker. We got Pabar. Says, this is a good format. I appreciate it, Pabar. We got Abdul. Says, peace. We got Johnny. We got Mark. We got Girl Oli, if I'm not saying that wrong, from Northern Norway. 70 degrees north. All right. So I appreciate you guys chiming in. We got Joel from Guyana. We got eBay Addicts. Says Audi laying off 9,500 workers. eBay Addicts, you are right on time with some interesting news, but not necessarily good news. And so since you mentioned that, I guess we're going to start the party off with that one because I think that's something that a lot of people would want to know about. So, very first article here. Let me zoom out some so we can get the full shebang. And I'll touch on this. So we're going to start off with some bad news, unfortunately. But yet all the stories here, depending on how you take them, could be considered that same way. So I appreciate you for sharing this. I didn't have this on my radar, but I do now. It says Audi to lay off 9,500 staff as part of strategic plans. And so for those that are new to the channel, I've been talking about unemployment and layoffs, and basically, as they say here, strategic plans, I look at more so as a restructuring of the current employment model, going from actual physical manpower and young lady power to automation. And so this current economic slowdown that every nation is feeling and every corporation has to adjust or have to deal with, there will be that window of employment and automation. So this next year or two or so, if not already, I would imagine you might be in a sector perhaps where you've heard about automation, or you might got wind of somebody in a competitor automating things and whatnot. So I anticipate more of that. But what's interesting is the fact that we're in 2019. So far, you look at the automotive sector. I did articles at the beginning of the year on Ford, GM, and Chrysler. And GM, I think it was back in February, March, where 15,000, I forgot the exact number, but it was several thousand. And so I said that you can guarantee by fall, winter, we'll hear more. So hearing this news here about Audi laying off 9,500 staff is not of surprise to me. And so it's unfortunate that I would assume if you're in the customer service sector, the manufacturing sector, perhaps you should brace for the fact that your industry might be impacted by this global slowdown that will impact. So it looks like we had a slight hiccup. So let me make sure everything is flowing smoothly. And so, as I was saying, the Audi situation, keep an eye out for it. Manufacturing has been the backbone of the USA, and I'm assuming these Audi dealerships in Germany, I'm assuming that's where this is at, is definitely not a good sign for everybody else. So I'll just share this article here, but I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and we'll go from there. Let me share that with you right here. And so let me go to the chat, actually, because I'm noticing that my shirt looks a little funny. Give me a second. As always, there's always issues to address in this line of work. So with that being the case, keep the thing moving right away. So I appreciate you for sharing that. As always, let me know in the chat if you guys hear me and if everything is rolling smoothly. Apologize for the hiccups. Weather conditions in this area is kind of spotty, so I'm assuming that has something to do with the internet, but I wouldn't guarantee that one. And so we'll keep it moving right away. Let me adjust some other things. I'm having more issues this morning with technology than I could have ever imagined. But I won't let it hold us back. And as always, any other articles, any other thoughts out there, feel free to share via the chat. Let me know. There will be no phone lines the afternoon streams. It says, I love crypto. It says, hey, Mike, did you know a lot of bank in China are going bankrupt? Love crypto. Yeah, I think I touched on that last night, or not the day before, referring to the fact that the banking sector in China is having issues. I think it was last night, if I'm not mistaken. So many articles I come across where I forget which days I share them. And so I will try to publicize the articles once I come across them. So I'm not surprised at all, to say the least. And what else is all good? Scott says all good. Okay, sounds good. So with that being the case, also for those that are tuning in that might catch the replay, I put some social media links down here. These are all links and so the three on this end here are more alternative media friendly. And so definitely, if you guys are not familiar with these, scroll beneath this video here and set up an account for one of these three on this side, or float and look for Rethinking the Dollar. Join me there. So if there's ever any disconnections here, you can find me at those social media formats beneath. So I post articles and videos there as well. So make sure you guys get connected if you can. So very next article. It happens to be an interesting subject, of one of which I'm not quite sure how to take it, because it's basically the admission by governments into something that we already kind of know is the fact that gold and silver is money, but it looks like they're attempting to acknowledge it publicly as something of value outside of the current Federal Reserve notes that we've been dealing with. So I don't find this to be surprising at all. But then my only question would be, who in their right mind at this current point would be willing to actually implement gold and silver back into circulation when it's determined, when its value is determined in Federal Reserve notes? So just something there. But South Carolina Legal Tender Act would treat gold and silver as money. And so one of my viewpoints is that you shouldn't necessarily have to wait until your government acknowledges it as gold and silver from a legal tender standpoint, as opposed to already knowing, and if you're an alternative media, then you're aware of the importance of gold and silver, and that everything on top of that is usually just a derivative or a spinoff or an IOU. But I wouldn't personally be waiting until a state acknowledges it as legal tender before utilizing it and having it positioned in your mind as something that you want to have as things unwind. So I'll thumb through a little bit, give you an idea what's going on, and share the link. It says a bill pre-filed in the South Carolina House would make gold and silver coins legal tender in the state. Passage of this bill would take a step toward creating currency competition. So here's some words that are very interesting. Currency competition in South Carolina. And so I would imagine the whole idea was to eliminate competition. You never want competition in a system that gives people options, because they can always choose to opt out. And so I don't really think this. So I apologize for that. It looks like for whatever reason, it's kept going in and out. So hopefully everything flows smoothly. It won't be long this afternoon because of these interruptions, but I'll try my best to get all the articles out there and go from there. So with that being the case, yeah. So as I was saying, gold and silver, I'm not sure what this bill will do, how far it's going to go, But I would suggest that you don't wait until it's passed before you actually utilize the privilege of getting gold and silver in your possession now. So let me see here. It says Representative Stuart Jones filed House Bill 4678 on November 20th. So it's relatively still new. And from what I'm seeing, I'm offline again. So hopefully I can get this corrected. Not sure what's going on. And we'll see if this is streaming at all. So it's showing that I'm live, but maybe I'm not. Let me try to exit out and come back on again. So hopefully I'm live. Let me know if you by thumbs up if you're currently seeing this. Thumbs up if you're currently seeing this. As I mentioned, intermediary parties, counterparty risk between me and you guys lies the internet and all these apps and whatnot that I'm using. So forgive me for the interruptions, but I'm going to try to keep it moving and go from there. So I'll put this in the chat so that everyone will get a chance to actually read more for yourself if you are interested. And so, yeah, apologize for that, but some things I can't control, such as internet connection and things of that nature. So we're good. Okay. So I feel like I now have to rush in order to get through all my articles because at any minute now it can go out again. And so I'm not excited about that, but it is what it is. Just keep it moving. Next article I want to touch on happens to be about Iran protests. And so once again, social unrest is happening in more and more countries. Expect to hear more about social unrest as time moves on because that's just the season we're in. And it has a lot to do with some of it is intentionally induced by probably the Western forces. And then a lot of it happens to be just people fed up within their own country. And I'd imagine that the Iran protest was stirred on by external forces, but more importantly, it hit home with the people who it impacts the most. And so, as I mentioned, I think last week, there's a lot of protests. I'm not sure if they're still in the streets or not, but they're burning stuff. And it looks like a lot of the things that are catalysts of their frustrations happens to be their currency and where they do business with their currency. And it happens to be the banks there. And so, give you an idea, it says Iran protests, hundreds of banks and government sites torched, says minister. Have a gentleman here standing with what might be a bank. So it's one of the things where when things hit the fan, people are unhappy. They go to whatever they pinpoint as the source of their problems, and it's government and banks in Iran. So it says, according to the IRNA, Romani Fazili also said up to 200,000 people had taken part in a nationwide in the unrest. And so 200,000 in the streets of Iran, never a good thing. We see flags burning. We see all this stuff happening here. And so it says 140 people, at least 140 people were killed. And then it says up to 7,000 arrested in the protest. So once again, once the governments begin cracking down on people that's already frustrated and irritated, it's only going to incite more unrest, I believe. So we'll see what happens. And it says, we received to date nearly 20,000 messages, videos, pictures, notes of regime abuses through Telegram messaging service, says U.S. Secretary Mike Pompeo. So we have U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. And so I would assume that he's being quoted here is because the U.S. will probably have to eventually say that the Iranian dictators are suppressing the people. We have to go in and free them and all that stuff like that. So I expect something of that nature to be coming soon. So we'll see. But I'll put this I'll put this in the chat if you guys are interested in finding out more for yourself and go from there. And so before I move further, let me check back with the chat and see how we're looking so far on the stream. Had some issues. Hopefully they're cleared up. So it looks like everything's going. So Iran is using crypto to fight against the embargo. Mark, hands down. And I have an article. I don't have an article. I chose not to share it, but I think it's in Pakistan. The Pakistani government is looking to incentivize its citizens for payments remitted back into the country from foreigners abroad, and they're saying that they'll be willing to incentivize citizens that live abroad to use the banking models as opposed to using whatever alternative means they use. I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with the crypto sector. So governments are starting to feel the pinch, especially in nations where the currencies are already not worth much and the citizens don't really respect them, to where they end up running to dollars or other assets. So as always, if anybody's watching, any articles that you come across that you want me to touch on or know of news stories, let me know in the chat and I'll definitely highlight it and bring it to the group. And so let's keep moving to the next article. This next article here is just something I think people should be concerned with. And so let me actually pull this up on the scene here, and I'll actually play this so you guys can hear what I hear. I think this is very interesting, that this is something that we're going to hear more about governments, or not governments, but the American public not being able to afford a lot of things.
This broadcast is committed to finding out why prices for many common items have surged in recent years. And today we look at the rising cost of cars. Americans are paying about 38% more for a new car or truck over the summer than they were just 10 years ago. And the average transaction price for some popular vehicles is up nearly 50, 60, even 70%. So how are drivers affording it? Well, as we found out, many are
it's
not.
interesting that these prices are going up significantly, but
count on the auto
manufacturers are laying off.
There we go.
To keep your heart pounding
You can be an explorer right here on Earth.
and your imagination racing.
It's the official truck of real people.
Trying to sucker people into buying expensive trucks and cars.
Consider
Not a good time.
car experience.
2020, going into 2020,
New Jersey, the typical family takes home about $39,000
in the developed world,
a
buying
year
brand new
after
items in
taxes.
general
We were curious,
might not be
what
smart.
kind of car or truck could we get on that income? So we checked in with CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger, kind of our in-house
Thought I would just share this with
financial
you
planner,
guys. Give
and
a
she
chance
recommended
to
spending
hear
10
someone else
to 15%
reporting a
of that
different side of the
income
story.
monthly on a vehicle. That leaves us with about a $400 a month budget. So
$400
let's see
a
what we
month
can
budget.
get.
Tony, welcome.
Hi.
Ivan Nelson, how you doing?
Tony Nicole.
At family-owned Williston Ford, the manager wooed us
You're not going to believe this car. Yeah? Really, it's just super cool.
with a Ford Explorer.
Ford Explorer.
With technology.
These are sonar sensors?
Yeah, little sensors.
You see the tire
Now,
pressures
without
are
even
all
going
set
any
at
further, I'm
41.
going to stop there because I don't even want to hear how this salesman is going to try to sell this. But imagine $400 a month is what this car falls in the range of. But the question is that financing aspect, how many years? And I would imagine that financing there was probably for 7, 8 years, or give or take, because that Explorer definitely is not cheap with all those bells and whistles the salesman was about to talk about. So middle-class families getting priced out of new American cars. Are you surprised? Not surprised at all, because once again, the cost of all these items are going up. The value proposition is not really worth it to me, given the fact that unless you are in a position where you can pay cash or do without a new car, do what you do. But I'll put that there. I'll put this in the chat for those that might be interested. Once again, me personally, it's not of interest to me, but there's a lot of people out there that are willing to do it. And so we got 90s Kid. Appreciate the comment. It says, good time to buy crypto. Good time to buy crypto. Silver gold is on discount while the market keeps pumping till 2020. Dash crypto is used a lot overseas. Mark Carl, Dash is heavily used in South America and in Latin America in general. So that Dash is definitely a coin that I do have interest in. Even though I don't like how the president or the overseer is trying to spin off the fact that they have a privacy feature, which they're slowly but surely removing. They're removing the option on wallets for people to actually use that privacy send feature. Are you surprised? So Walter JC said, I just bought a 2019 F-150. I got $14,000 off of the sticker price, which is cheaper than my 2015. Walter J, you got a deal there, my friend. And so it's one of the things where I'm curious as to, because the automotive sector isn't in the greatest of shape. So even if you are going to go out looking for something, you definitely can get a bargain, because a lot of people aren't going to new car lots these days as opposed to old used car lots. So yeah, I prefer to just have my old used car and ride it till the wheels fall off that thing. That's just me. Says, curious, why doesn't anyone point out Texas as a gold, silver, as a money state? Black blog. I think primarily because Texas in their operations, apart from that depository they're building, they tend to stay out of the news, or they're not in the mainstream news. So apart from having to go dig for some news sources in Texas, it's not common that people talk about the fact that they are building or probably already built a depository to bring back all of the gold for their pension funds and all that stuff, which lets me know where those politicians, where their minds are at. They actually see the writing on the wall, and they know the importance of, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And if it's not your own state, when it's time to go get it, it may not be there. So let me see here. It says, hola, Norman. It says, the people asked Norg contact Norges Bank where they want to withdraw their share of the oil fund, pension fund. Let me see about that. I don't know about that bank, but let me go ahead and Google it and see what comes up. Let me see if there's any news surrounding this bank. I never heard of it. Ooh, so if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Norges Bank, which I could be pronouncing this wrong, I'm not sure. But here's an interesting article that happened a couple weeks ago that it's one of the things that makes you wonder. I'll pull this up real quick, not in a regular rotation, but serves its purpose. It says, Norges Bank CEO to resign, pension fund returns 1.6% in Q3. And so this is very interesting because pension funds and retirement, products in general are and have always been sold to the public as going to return 6%, 7%, 8%, depending on whatever it is they're trying to package up in that bundle. But to get 1.6% in Q3 definitely is not good. So the fact he resigned, I'm assuming it was probably before they fired him, but I can't even pronounce his name, to step down after 12 years running the 1.0 trillion fund. 1.9 trillion fund. Stepping down. The government pension fund global recently surpassed 10 trillion kroner in asset value for the first time in its history. So that's 1.09 trillion that's invested in all types of things, of which governments aren't allowed to invest a good portion of that in metals. So they have to buy government bonds, equities, and all types of other digital paper products. So more promises, subject to being broken. I'll put this in the chat as well for those that are interested in reading more. But I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I'm assuming you happen to be my Norway connection over there, so I appreciate that. Let me see. Anybody know what locations I can buy rare metals like gold and silver? You got SD Bullion, JM Bullion, all good places. Will people spend over Christmas to cheer themselves up? People will spend out of habit because it's the holiday season. And I imagine people won't actually be spending. They're going to be financing. So what I anticipate happening, I anticipate more people, especially after Christmas, after the holidays, beginning of the new year, they come out with statistics. And it's going to be, mark my words, in January, I'm going to put an article on the screen that says all-time high, credit card usage for Christmas. Retail investors tapped out, but they decided to splurge big on credit cards or something like that. So expect to hear stories about all-time highs in credit card usage for the holidays, because disposable income, even if it's there, I think people's priorities are so built around consumption and not saving or investing or speculating or anything of that nature that will benefit them in the long run. And so I think credit card usage will be majorly high because of lack of actual people with currency or in their bank account to go in and get it right away. And so 90s Kids said we're having a weak fourth quarter. I would agree 100%. It says don't buy a new car. It depreciates right off the lot. A one owner used car 5 years old with 60K, 100,000 miles would be a good content purchases. Mark Carl, good advice there, my friend. So let's keep it moving. I want to get to the next article. And so this happens to be about something that, once again, is an indication of where we are at as a country according to these statistics here. It says, I'll zoom in. This is interesting. It says, Americans simply can't afford lawyers anymore. So, what brought about this study, I don't know. And apart from the fact, let me go back to click on Bloomberg and see if we get something better. It says, we're going to court without a lawyer is new normal for U.S. litigants. So, yeah, so the fact that people can't afford representation or are tapped out and choosing to defend themselves, however that go. Unfortunately, our school system didn't teach people actually the importance of how to defend ourselves and utilize our actual rights themselves. So a lot of people probably are unprepared. So I definitely, this subject matter is something I'm definitely diving into. Stay tuned because I'll have more information as to how I'm going to present it. So I'll keep it at that. But for those that are interested, I'll put this there. But it's just more of a highlight as to the state of the economic Main Street or lack thereof recovery act for whatever that is. So here's another thing. Here's something interesting. Gun sales surge amid fears of gun control proposals from 2020 Democrats. So this was as of yesterday. So it looks like because more uncertainty in the political realm, because it looks like in this two-party system we've been given, there's Trump and then there's Warren or Sanders, or some people even comment and tweet about Yang. So you got those choices. So people are going out and say, hey, let me get my guns now before they pass some type of legislation and go from there. So definitely, whether it's Republican or Democrat, I believe, in my personal opinion, going into 2020, especially 2021 and beyond, either party's going to have to come up with some type of good legislation to address the Second Amendment because, once again, we're the most heavily armed population, and they don't want people going out buying more guns at a time that there's economic and political unrest due to just things, correcting to fair value. And so what else we got here in the chat? Let me check back in the chat. As always, if there's any thoughts out there, anything you guys want me to touch on directly that's in the news, put it over here in the chat and I'll address it. And for those that might just be tuning in now, beneath me are some social media platforms. I would encourage you guys, if you're not a part of them, particularly the three on this side and the one on this side, they are more alternative media friendly. And so I'll definitely be putting stuff up there. I already do. And so connect with me there in case, things on YouTube happens to change, which I believe it will in the 2020 timeframe. So make sure you guys subscribe and get on those platforms because I might end up doing some streaming from Float because I like Float a lot. Trump is a liar and a traitor. Have it may, whatever you personally believe. One of my biggest questions is, what exactly does the public expect from him? Like, what really can he do, given the fact he ran upon ABCD and haven't even done A, nevertheless BC? Everybody know what the promises are. So what exactly are you expecting for a second term? So apart from him actually living and being true for what he ran upon, going back a couple years from there, not quite sure what he can do at this current point because he's going to have to cut taxes and do some new tax something for the bottom portion of society, financially speaking, which will only increase the deficits. So that means the only thing he can do is extend the debt. And I was of the mindset that under this last financial crisis, we doubled the national debt from 10 to 20-ish trillion under the prior administration. And so I'm of the mindset as well that in this next 4 or 5 years, barring some type of correction, collapse, or whatever, Trump will have to definitely double the current debt we have now. We're at 23 now. So that means we'll have to be well in excess of 30-ish trillion between now and the time he leaves office to keep this thing going based upon prior trends. So let me know what you think about that one. Yeah, I expect the truth, bar light broker. I understand that as well. But, as Jack Nicholson said, you can't handle the truth. I don't think the public is ready for the truth outside of those that follow alternative media that have some form of truth outside the mainstream narrative. I wouldn't count on it is what I'm saying. I wouldn't count on it. But let's keep this party going. So the next article here. And so I'm definitely going to touch on subject matters globally. So I'm all these news articles here, they span from local to around the globe. That's why you see this globe right here turning, because I'm going to scan the planet, look for some stories worth reporting to you guys. And so here's an interesting article here. This is short and brief, but it has to do with Turkey. Turkish watchdog takes steps enabling banks to remove non-performing loans from its books. And so in 2020, expect to see these initials here, NPLSs, become a frequent topic amongst all banks because as the economy continues to slow, there is no real way of jolting it and bringing it back to life because it's all debt-based. So apart from some type of MMT, infrastructure spending that injects trillions upon trillions into the economy directly, there's no way of any type of new growth. So there's going to be risk of defaults on loans at an alarming rate. And so in Turkey, this was as of today, this came out of Istanbul, Reuters. It says banking watchdog changed loan classification regulations so that banks are able to remove their books, group of 5. It's assuming it's just a particular, whatever, in Turkey, classified non-performing loans, marking another step to clean up bad debt from last year's currency crisis. So, of course, Turkey's still going through issues, but a lot of people defaulted on their loans and they're still stuck on the balance sheet of these banks, and the banks they're an asset to somebody and they're a liability to some. So that whole idea of kind of clean that up. And so it's easier for the commercial banks to remove it from their balance sheet because most of those debts were fractionally reserved, created bank debts to where they were created out of nothing. So it's just a debit credit here and there. So they can actually remove that and put it in a special category and write it off in a sense. But what I found interesting in this article is the fact that they're saying that even though they're writing it off on the bank side, they're still going to come after they're still going to come after the borrower. So you're not going to really get away from debt. So that's when people think that this next economic correction crisis, that the debt's going to be forgiven, wiped away. Because the system's designed for them to profit, not you. So they're not going to let you get out of your loan the way that they are able to just write off and remove and separate categories of loan debts and obligations and not take a hair loss. But that's just my 2 cents. He's right, though. This is the greatest economy ever for the rich. Good stuff. The very next article. And this is something that I think we're going to hear more of. This is out of Slovak. And so this is Slovenia or Slovak. I'm assuming that's the region. I'm not too familiar with it myself. Slovakia. And so this is a telecom paper. Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting article because of the subject matter. Slovak banks will offer NFC cash withdrawals at ATM. So Russia's doing this, and a lot of Eastern European countries are adopting the fact that you can take your phone up to an ATM, cut your NFC on your phone, and tap it against the ATM machine, do your transaction, it'll spit out. So you don't necessarily need even a card anymore. So this is the push to digitize the world by making everything accessible from your phone. And so it says the option will be available using bank cards as well as mobile applications like Apple Pay and Google Pay as well. So just the advancement of the financial realm, of which usually it started to look like most of these type of things are spun off in smaller countries out east, and then they're as an experiment, but then they're rolled back into the U.S. as a policy once they're tested in smaller countries such as this. So I think of course the Google Pay and Apple Pay is available now, but it's not at ATMs to my knowledge, or unless somebody let me know in the chat. But I'll put this in the chat if anybody wants to do a little research for themselves. Feel free to do so. And for those that are tuning in, if you're enjoying the information and if this is a well-versed, well-round news update for you guys, don't be afraid to donate a thumbs up. Beneath this video, just hit that little thumbs up button so more people can find out a different source of news. Because the good news is, and I was trying to figure out a slogan to kind of attach with this, and I was going, let me know about this as a little catchy, funny slogan. I was going to label this in some advertisement, fake news without a teleprompter. So let me know if that sounds corny or what in the chat. I'm just curious, but anyway, keep it moving. Here's something I think is interesting as well. And I'm going to zoom in more on this one because this article here, I didn't get a chance to thumb through it all the way, but just title alone caught my eye. This is from Financial Post, and it says, Global Risk binge gives central bank cause to shudder. So this is originally out of Bloomberg, and it looks like my computer's refreshing for whatever reason, but it looks like I'm good. So I thumbed through this, and it talks a lot about the impact of low interest rates on commercial banks and how central banks and commercial banks are needed to work together now to figure out how they can remain profitable, because, you know, the lower the interest rates go, the lower the Fed funds rates go, therefore the lower the interbank exchange rate, or the what used to be the LIBOR, which is now the SOFR for the U.S., those rates will always remain below the Fed funds rates. And so that's going to be a problem as time goes on, because you got those reserves sitting on the balance sheets of the Federal Reserve, which belongs to the banks. And then the amount of interest they receive will have to be addressed, because once again, if it's 0% interest rates, we're going to be at negative at that point if it gets to that point. But the banks, those reserves won't be making money, so it'll be just stagnant cash. So there's going to be issues on how to address this. So they're right now, they already have a game plan, or they're trying to figure things out. But it says here, historically low interest rates are warping markets. Listen to that. Historically low interest rates are warping markets. It says in August, some 17 trillion of global investment grade debt, around a third of the total, had negative yields. That means investors holding a bond to maturity may receive less at the end of the paid out of the beginning. So risky. Government debt, bonds are problematic because interest rates are interconnected with the amount of interest given on those loans. And then, of course, we got the yield curve inversion, which is not inverted as of now, but maybe it is or maybe it's not. But it's not when it inverts, it's the problem. It's when it goes back up. And that's where that time lag from the moment it re-establishes itself above the reinversion curve until the market catches up, I guess. That little window of time is usually 6 to 9 months based upon prior trends I've looked at. Therefore, it lets me know that right around January, into December, would be the official time frame that a recession would follow. But here in the U.S., the word recession will not be allowed to be used from the Federal Reserve's mouth or commercial banks directly, because using that word will incite a lack of confidence in the current banking model, and therefore it would spur on the demand of people to go to try to withdraw some funds out of fear and panic. So you won't hear the word recession used officially by Jerome Powell. He's always going to use the word expansion and what he can do to keep the expansion going. So with that being the case, I got, let me see, got about 2 or 3 more articles, but we're approaching our 38-minute mark, so I'm going to dial back. So I'm just going to get these to you outright. Here's an interesting article. This is in the UK area. Banks experiencing 5 glitches a week, leaving millions without access to cash. So should I comment on this or leave it as is? Because the whole subject matter has been with confidence or lack thereof in the current paradigm. And we have banks that are having glitches, at least 5 a week. How much longer will you be willing to subject yourself to glitches where you feel that sense of maybe I should go get more cash out, or maybe I should switch banks or whatever? But this is what's happening. And it says here, it looks like Barclays, Tesco Bank. It says 265 IT glitches involved 133 incidents involving internet banking, 111 mobile banking failures, and 90 telephone banking outages. And so this is just over the past year. So UK area, banking system there, computer technology, take it for what it's worth. I'll put it in the chat. I'll let you guys dissect that further. Next one here. Deutsche Bank sells 50 billion debt portfolio to Goldman in bad bank wind down. So I just talked about banks having issues a minute ago. I talked about Iran, people getting pissed and burning the banks in Iran, and the Turkish banks, non-performing loans. Remember this one? Non-performing loans. Here we have Deutsche Bank sells bad bank. So the bad bank they're referring to is all those NPLs that I was just referring to that's packaged in what they call a bad bank. They sold that to $50 billion to Goldman. So where did Goldman get that money from to acquire bad bank the liabilities, the repo market. So you wonder why they're setting all-time highs of overnight lending and intraday lending. And look what Goldman Sachs is choosing to do with that funds. They're going back to Deutsche Bank, which is the biggest catalyst of all, and they're buying their junk. So the QE that's currently underway now is being used to go back and fund who? Right here. So now you know. I'll leave that in the chat. And so I appreciate the channel offer. Says from Barlight Broker, says, got my MP3 loaded with Tupac ready for stuff to hit the fan. Thank you, bro. I appreciate you, my friend. So, something worthwhile. I would encourage you to dive further if you're interested. In the very last article here. This hits back right to the core essence of what is going to be a major issue starting in 2020, if not already. And this one here. Let me make sure the screen is on. So I'm not even going to go dive into it further because the subject matter says it all. It says $7 trillion in unfunded U.S. pensions as domestic debt hits a record high. $7 trillion in unfunded, which means there's a shortfall of what's expected to be paid out and what's actually available. And so that gap there will not shrink. It will only grow more because as people live longer, as more promises are expected, as the economy fluctuates, the actual ability for those accounts to grow naturally, it's already come and gone. And so because everything is artificially propped up, artificially held together, there'll be no way of shrinking that gap without there being some austerity, which is basically a restructuring of promises in some form or fashion, a haircut as far as people being willing to take less, or the federal government decides to come in and pass some type of bill, which they will have to do by 2022, 2023, just throw out some numbers, to address this widening gap. So $7 trillion now, by the end of next year, is going to be above 10, just because the markets, naturally are not going to grow by themselves. They're going to have to be artificially induced like they are currently. Therefore, everybody that's expecting to get a payout at some point in their life might end up having some issues as far as being able to get the full promise. Like, you'll get some of that promise, I believe, but the full promise, in my personal opinion, of course, is that I personally am not and wouldn't count on getting paid out the full shebang. And then on top of that, pensions and all types of retirement products, they're usually sold to the public and sold to the investor as being something that will grow by compound interest over the length of your life, which those two things there make it very hard to determine that actual amount, because if markets aren't naturally growing because of true capitalism at work, capital actually being used in the market to produce, and it's artificially injected by funny money, makes it not genuine value being pumped in there. So you shouldn't be able to expect much because purchasing power is going to eat away most of that. And then the second one is that I had a second thought. I forgot what my second thought was, but it'll come to me once I go offline. But anyway, here's something worthwhile for those to take into account. I will put this in the chat. And this live stream went a little bit longer than what I intended it to. I wanted to keep these around 30 minutes, but because there's so much stuff to cover, I thought I would just bring it down and give you guys a full shebang. So there you have it. You have everything I have in front of me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 articles. 2 or 3 came at the contribution of you, the viewers. I appreciate the audio one. So for those that might be tuning in late, I'll actually give you an idea, give you a rundown. And so this is interesting. Audi to lay off 9,500. So that was contributed by somebody out there. And then this Norges Bank CEO resigns, pension fund returns 1.6%. And they were told, all people who put into those things and expect, they're told they're going to get 7-8% compounded over time equals whatever they're told. Not in Norway here. So those are some articles that were contributed by you guys. So I appreciate it. So that being the case, this is what I'm going to try to do. And so the goal is to get you guys caught up on what's happening around the world. So you can see some flags, you see everything here. So if you enjoyed this, definitely give it a thumbs up beneath this video. Take this news because as I mentioned, this is fake news without a teleprompter. So this is something worth chewing on, because if I was sitting here reading off a teleprompter, I'm hoping that you wouldn't be able to really take me serious, because I'm reading somebody else's thoughts, not coming up with my own. But anyway, enough me ranting. If you've enjoyed this, share this. If you're watching this, these links here, they're in the description of this video. If you don't have an account to these three here, I encourage you to set them up and definitely go on Float, because I might start streaming from Float real soon. And so to provide a back door or a second channel of streaming, I want to make sure I have one of these set up. So if you're watching this, go to these sites, sign up. They're free, of course, and they're more privacy centered. So I think they're a lot better than these two right here. But anyway, it's good to use all mediums of communication we can while we still can. So with that being the case, thumbs up, share this video, get it out there to your family and friends, because once again, more than likely they're not going to hear this from this particular angle anywhere else. And then also, for those that are interested in being a blessing to the channel, you can donate via chat. I appreciate that as well. And then also Patreon. There's opportunities there. I got more things I'm going to be putting into the community for people that are willing to invest in me to share this. I'll definitely make sure I make it worth your investment. But other than that being the case, see you guys later. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hey there, sorry for this interruption, but I wanted to bring something to your attention. If you've been enjoying this live stream, why don't you partner with me and be a support to the channel via Patreon membership for just a minimum of $5 a month. All you have to do is scroll down beneath this video here, click the Patreon link, then consider donating as little as $5 a month toward the channel. A little bit of crumbs can go a long way, and I appreciate your support. Now, let's get back to this live stream. Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RTD News updates. And as you can tell from today's title, Congress is coming after your 401k. America's pension crisis is getting worse. I'm going to be covering several different articles, all dealing with the ongoing pension crisis we're experiencing here in America and what is to come. And so we're only 4 days into the new year, and already we have news about countries deciding to remove themselves or rethink the dollar, or aka dump the dollar. President Erdogan in Turkey tells his citizens in order to help the country out, it'd be in your best interest to go under your pillow, grab the dollars, the euros, and gold. And as you tell from today's title, how the baby boomers will lose their retirement nest egg, I want to share with you a couple thoughts as well as some articles on how the next market correction will be catastrophic for a lot of people.